All right. So obviously still miss you guys. But yeah, let's get on with the video for today. Now, I know that you guys don't have homework according to this lesson, but this lesson is still pretty important in terms of like your understanding. So if you missed our live lecture yesterday, then hopefully you'll take a look at this video in order to get the lesson that you missed. Okay. So, today we're going to talk about making predictions, specifically when you are allowed to make predictions and when you shouldn't be making predictions. Remember, one of the most powerful things that we can do in statistics is to make predictions. Okay? And when we're looking at our regression, that's one of the most powerful things that it can do. However, in order to make predictions properly, we need to like follow certain rules and use our brain when it comes to like in figuring out when we can or can't make predictions. Okay. So in our example from one of the previous talks that we've had, we're looking at the hours that a student studied versus the score that they got on their AP Stats quiz. Now, this is, you know, this is data that I got from a friend of mine. I think this was actually real data of his quizzes. Um, and and it's actually kind of cool that we ran a regression with it and he, you know, was able to come up with this equation. So here's my regression equation. And if I were to make a prediction of a kid who studied 2.2 and a half hours, my prediction would be on my regression line right here, right? And so if I plug it into the equation, if I plug my 2.5 into the equation, right, I get a prediction of 14.77. Or in other words, a predicted score that the student would get of about 14.77. Okay? No problem. Like, yeah, Mr. Shu, that's cool. However, let's say I were to make another prediction. Let's say someone studied for 8 hours on the quiz. Okay? If I were to plug that into my equation, I'd get a score of 25.44. And you might be like, wait, hold up. The highest score that you can get on an AP Stats quiz that's either given by you or my friend, right, is a 20 or at most a 21 if you get the extra credit. So how could it be 25? Okay? Well, what happened? Well, what happened was extrapolation. Okay? If we look at our original data, we had nobody who studied for more than 6 hours. So the linear regression line fit for this set of data here. However, we don't have data for beyond 6 hours. Now, we know that the highest score is a 21, so eventually this is going to, this is going to have to taper off and be a curve. But according to this data, a linear line fits it. Okay? That's the danger of extrapolation. Now, you guys are all old enough to realize that, like, yeah, we still do need to extrapolate sometimes, but you avoid it when possible because it's very hard to extrapolate properly. And if you do extrapolate, you always have to be like, yeah, I am extrapolating. Acknowledge that you're extrapolating and that there are other possibilities that could happen. Like, remember when we were talking about the coronavirus and I was like, hey, the function is linear now, right? But it probably will turn exponential based on what has happened in other countries, okay? And it actually did here in the US as well. So we did do an extrapolation using a linear function, but with a grain of salt, knowing that our extrapolation might be incorrect. Okay, last thing that I want to hit on, and I generally spend a lot of time on this, but I don't want this video to be too long, is that correlation does not mean causation, right? Even though it can be seen from our example that, in general, the kids who studied more got higher quiz scores. You cannot say that the cause of a higher quiz score is more than hours studied, is caused by the number of hours studied based on this correlation alone. Let me give you an example. When we look at the data for the coronavirus, and I should have pulled this up earlier. Okay, so excuse me for not having it ready. But if I go to Worldometer, coronavirus US, right? And I look at the data for this, right? Here is my scatter plot, okay? Time is my independent variable, and the total coronavirus cases is the dependent variable. And if I were to look at this and I were to say, okay, this correlation is caused by time. So the number of coronavirus cases is caused by the amount of time elapsed. That's actually ridiculous because we know that it's because of not social distancing. If we are in contact with each other, then the germs are going to pass, right? If we're not in contact with one another, then less germs will be passed back and forth, right? So the root cause is actually people running into people, or living beings running into other living beings, not actually time, right? So there is a strong correlation, right, between time and the total coronavirus cases, but the total coronavirus cases is not caused directly by time passing. Okay? Hopefully that lesson was helpful to you. Yeah, and miss you all. Please stay safe. Bye now.